Hi folks, I almost didn't do a weekly overview because, and I've never posted any comments on the community page, or there's something in the YouTube lineup where there's a community tab and I can post comments. And I was going to say something along the lines of, I know I said in my new moon in Virgo video, which I posted yesterday or 2 days ago, that I was going to do a weekly overview. But then when I was looking at the aspects this week, they were all covered in the new moon in Virgo video, and that's fine. They can still sit there. But then as I was looking at this stuff, I was just like, well, the new moon in Virgo video covers the new moon, but then it talks about, very briefly, it references the two eclipses as well. And then before that, we had sort of the eagle eye view of 2025. And both these videos have had a macro-ness to them. I was like, let's just take a look at this coming week and kind of narrow it down. I'll do the list of aspects, but as I said, the vast majority of the aspects are talked about in a certain amount of detail in the new moon in Virgo video from 2 days ago. And that, between this video and that video, that is the more important video. But let's just cover a few points. First and foremost, the new moon in Virgo is on Friday night Pacific time, Saturday morning for a lot of people, or Saturday for a lot of people. And as we head to that point in time, and I make this point in my new moon video, I make this point all the time, our energy will deplete. And when the moon is in Leo before it gets to Virgo, you may get a sense of closure around the month of Leo that started around July the 26th when the new moon in Leo occurred. So by month, those of you who watch my channels, you know that when I'm talking the month of Leo, month of Virgo, the month of a particular sign starts when the new moon occurs in that sign and opens up a 28-day period till the next new moon, so that the word month is derived from the word moon, and so we actually have the month of Leo. And we are moving towards this week. This week is the last week of the month of Leo, and then we're going to have the month of Virgo start with this new moon in Virgo on Friday, on the 22nd. So the moon is going to get darker. We are going to feel exhausted, depleted, a little bit flat, a little bit hopeless as we head towards the latter part of this week. And we will also likely, when the moon is going over Leo, right now the moon is going over the sign of Gemini. I think tomorrow it enters the sign of Cancer, then it's going to enter the sign of Leo, and then as soon as it enters the sign of Virgo, we're going to have that new moon. When it goes to the sign of Leo, you might experience a kind of a closing parentheses to the month of Leo as formed by this new moon. So that's one important characteristic. The aspects that are made this week, specifically tomorrow on the 19th, the Sun trines Chiron. On the 22nd, we have the new moon, of course, in Virgo. The Sun enters Virgo on the same day before the new moon occurs, and Venus squares Chiron. Venus is in Cancer. And then on the 24th, the Sun squares Uranus. Now, if I look ahead a couple of days, on the 25th, Venus trines Saturn, and first Venus moves into Leo, and then Venus trines Saturn. And on the 26th, Venus trines Neptune. And I'm including those in this weekly overview, kind of because it takes us, it really does, I'm posting this on Monday, so it goes over about a week. But with the Sun squaring Uranus, the most characteristic aspect that the new moon in Virgo makes is that it squares Uranus in Gemini. So the Sun squaring Uranus and Venus trining Saturn and Venus trining Neptune are both aspects that I cover in that new moon in Virgo video. So let's just go over this again. The Sun in Leo trines Chiron in Aries on the 19th. On the 22nd, the Sun enters the sign of Virgo and then goes right into the new moon in Virgo. Venus from Cancer squares Chiron in Aries. And then on the 24th, the Sun in Leo squares Uranus in, the Sun in Virgo squares Uranus in Gemini. And then on the 25th, Venus enters Leo and trines Saturn in Aries. And then the next day on the 26th, trines Neptune in Aries. So the reason why I did this video as a weekly overview, and what is not covered in the new moon in Virgo video, is the fact that we can look at this week as a week of transitions and important transitions. They are sort of regular transitions that occur on about a monthly basis, but at least two planets, the Sun and Venus, change signs. And this week marks that. And the third thing about this particular week is that Mercury, very much now direct and starting to pick up speed, is likely in whatever aspects Mercury made to the natal planets in your birth chart. Mercury is going to be making those for a third time all the way to August the 26th. Remember, Mercury entered his shadow degrees around June the 29th. So from June the 29th to July the 17th, Mercury went over a certain degrees in Leo. Then July the 17th to August the 11th, Mercury went retrograde over those degrees. And then August the 11th to August 26th, Mercury is going to go over those degrees again. So this week, outside of the fact that we're in the dark of the moon, outside of the fact that we're in the last week of the Leo month, outside of the fact that we're heading towards the new moon in Virgo, and all those aspects that I covered and discussed, the new moon squaring Uranus in Gemini, and therefore the sun getting ready to square Uranus in Gemini, Venus moving into Leo, and from there trining Saturn and Neptune. Outside of those aspects which I covered in the new moon in Virgo video, this week is characterized by the sun moving from Leo to Virgo, Venus moving from Cancer to Leo, and Mercury direct, picking up speed, covering. I mean, because the 26th, when Mercury is, the 26th is the date, is next Tuesday. So the day when Venus trines Neptune. So Mercury is going to cover all the real estate that he has covered twice already, once direct, once retrograde, between now and next Tuesday. So on a micro level, if we go from this eagle-eye view of the rest of 2025 that I did 2 videos ago, if we go into the new moon in Virgo and narrow down just a little bit and look at the next eclipses as well, now we can look at this coming week and kind of take a look at things on a much more micro level. The sun, moves into a new part of the chart, a new house every 30 days, 30 odd days. So that certainly is going to be occurring. And then we go right into the new moon. Venus typically takes about, anywhere about, does Venus spend roughly about 5 weeks in every sign? Give me 1 second. I want to give you a sense of this. I was starting to confuse. The reason why I paused there was I was confusing Venus with Mercury. Mercury typically about 3 weeks in every sign. Mars spends about 6 weeks in every sign. Why is my PowerPoint acting up? Seriously, here we go. Venus entered Leo on August the 25th. And Venus is going to enter Virgo on September the 19th. So a little under 4 weeks, actually. A little under 4 weeks. September 19th, Venus enters Virgo. And then October 13th, Venus enters Libra. So again, somewhere between 3.5 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. So my initial instinct was not that far wrong to say 3 weeks. But I kind of caught myself because I was just like, does Venus really spend as much time in each sign as Mercury? Mercury spends less time when he's moving forward. Mercury spends about 3 weeks. Venus, I guess we can say 3.5 to 4 weeks. Irrespective. Venus moving into Leo is a bit of a relief from my perspective, only because with Mercury having gone retrograde in Leo, and now direct, matters related to the house occupied by Leo can finally start to move forward. The new moon in Virgo will give the Leo part of the chart a certain amount of oomph as well to move forward. And Venus coming in after Mercury is direct will now take the matters related to the house occupied by the sign of Leo in your chart and start to move things to the next level. With the seeds that you have planted in the Leo part of the chart, while Mercury has been retrograde and has been getting you to redefine things and go back to the drawing board, now we finally get the blessings and the next steps that a Venus transit brings, the kind of soothing, harmonious, here's a gift, here's a blessing, let me grease the wheels and move this forward, here's a potential relationship building opportunity, here's a potential financial opportunity, here's a potential creative opportunity. Venus's entry anywhere is welcome, but her entry into Leo, particularly on the heels of the sun getting ready to move into Virgo, the new moon in Leo, the month of Leo coming to an end this week, Mercury now direct, moving through Leo pretty quickly, and then Venus comes in to bring some, not, well, I'll use the word relief, but to add to, one of the things we talked about both in the new moon and Virgo video, but especially in the eagle eye view of 2025, was that now for the next 3 months, as we head towards the end of the first week of November, it is 3 months of forward movement, and Mercury retrograde has certainly contributed to which opportunities we are letting go of and leaving behind, and which direction we're moving forward. So Venus's switch in that regard is something to look forward to. The sun's switch into Virgo is natural, and it's important. It just kind of starts to move the emphasis. I think part of the reason why I decided to talk about this stuff is because we're done with Mercury retrograde in Leo, and the sun's entry into Virgo, into the next house where a new moon is going to occur, and Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, is going to be moving forward. Again, with every consecutive movement, the sun entering Virgo on the 22nd, Venus entering Leo on the 25th, we move past the Mercury retrograde energy, which, while important and relevant and helpful, kind of creates a sense of greater and greater flow. And Mercury being direct and going over his shadow degrees by next Tuesday, August the 26th, contributes to that. So that is my biggest, if I was like, why am I doing this video? That's my biggest takeaway for this weekly overview, which is we're headed to the new moon. It's an important new moon because it's one of 2 new moons in the same sign, Virgo, and the second new moon is a solar eclipse. And I covered this new moon energy and to some extent talk about the eclipses in the new moon and Virgo video. And I've already said between this video and the new moon and Virgo video, it's the new moon and Virgo video that's important. That is an important video, because I talk about what it is that this new moon in Virgo opens up. Because the new moon solar eclipse in Virgo is a south node eclipse on September the 21st. It's talking about releasing something in the Virgo part of the chart. So this new moon in Virgo actually acts as a proper new moon. I've covered all this content in the new moon in Virgo video. But this coming week, we will lose a certain amount of energy as the week progresses. It's more of a yin week than a yang week. It's the last week the moon is getting darker of the Leo month. And we get planetary shifts and Mercury moving forward through his shadow degrees, all of which foretell that we are moving further and further away from Mercury retrograde, Mercury direct, and moving forward. And as I've said to you all along, it's going to be this new moon in Virgo that really makes us feel like, all right, that Mercury retrograde energy is behind us, and we really get to now take that train, and no matter if we've switched tracks and are headed in the same directions, but kind of, or moved our eggs from one basket to the other as a result of Mercury retrograde, we now get to move forward, okay? As far as the aspects are concerned, I actually talked about Sun trining Chiron, Sun in Leo trining Chiron in Aries in last week's overview, because last week we had, on the 11th, we had Venus conjuncting Jupiter, and on the 16th, we had Venus trining the North Node, and on the 19th, tomorrow we're going to have the Sun trining Chiron. I talked about how there were all these trines in place after Mercury was direct to kind of start to create some flow. And to some extent, as this week progresses, yes, we have Venus squaring Chiron, prior to, so there is this energy as planets clear the sign of Cancer. They have to take some sort of action to help Chiron continue with this healing work that he's been doing in the sign of Aries, reintegrating some part of us that, likely due to some sort of conditioning or some kind of traumatic event or in our childhood or teenage years, kind of some part of us in the Aries part of the chart separated from our sort of whole healed place, and a Chiron transit seeks to reintegrate that. So Venus squaring Chiron is not, these kinds of aspects can happen multiple times in a year. So the only thing for those of you who are tracking that particular aspect is what sort of Venusian aspect needs to occur in the house occupied by Cancer in your chart that aids in that healing. I can't say more than that because I'm not doing this video for a particular rising sign, or I'm not looking at an individual chart, but just looking at that particular transit. I don't know that I'm necessarily putting a lot of emphasis on that. I think with some of these aspects, as long as we remain aligned, a lot of these things just sort of tend to occur as part of whatever it is that we're doing. The sun enters Virgo, new moon in Virgo, sun squaring Uranus, Venus trining Saturn, Venus trining Neptune. I covered all of that in that new moon in Virgo video. We don't need to go over it. The most important thing about this week that I just need you to know is that Venus and the sun move to change signs, and Mercury is moving through his shadow degrees. And so we have this movement through the sign of Leo into Virgo for the sun, Mercury moving towards next week, moving into Virgo, and then we have Venus coming into Leo to kind of soothe things after Mercury retrograde. And we'll feel the impact of all of that, as we head into next week and beyond. Okay, there are 3 ways to engage with me, as I like to say. The free videos that I do, the sign-specific videos I put in the membership part of the channel. I am going to be uploading at least one of those videos now today. The sign-specific videos are meant for rising signs. You can watch them for your sun sign or your moon sign, but they're meant for rising signs. They're in the membership part of the channel. It's $6.99 a month, and moving forward, starting today, the videos that will be posted will simply have the rising sign and today's date. And then I'm going to cycle through all the rising signs and then come back to, and then cycle through them again and cycle through them again. And every time I come to a rising sign, I'm going to basically read that rising sign chart and look ahead. We're no longer doing new moon, full moon videos. I want to give you a more comprehensive reading of the chart for that rising sign. And I suggest you give it a shot and then see if that works for you. I think that content will be richer and more helpful than just doing a new moon video and a full moon video and a new moon video and a full moon video. So that process is going to start today. And of course, information on memberships and information on getting a personal reading with me, my email address is in the description box below. You can email me there and I can send you information about personal readings, the different options, prices, etc. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. When you subscribe, YouTube will give you the option to click on a bell next to the subscribe button. Click the wiggly bell on top, the wiggling bell. You'll be notified whenever I do new videos. You can contribute to this channel monetarily by using the thanks button underneath the videos, or by donating. Information on that is in the description box below. You can contribute to this channel for free by liking this video or leaving a comment. And if you find my content useful, feel free to share the video or let people know about the channel. As I said, this is not a massively lengthy or complicated video. It's that new moon in Virgo video I did 2 days ago that has the bulk of content. But for anyone looking for a kind of a sense of the energy of this week, this does that trick, and there will clearly be more and more to follow. All right, sounds good. That's all I have to say for now. Take care.